Hello friends, welcome to an interesting episode. Today I'm going to be showing you guys the basis or the skeleton of a shake that I drink every day. I call it the Hormetic shake. Remember, hormesis is the process in the body that basically means what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Hormesis usually comes from environmental factors such as being in the sauna, eating phytochemicals that come from vegetables or fruits that signal to our body that we are in a stress state and that we need to have bodily processes to react to that stress state. So for example, when you go into the sauna, you get heat shock proteins, and those proteins help your biology in a variety of ways. When you eat garlic, which is right here, you get sulfur-containing molecules that do the same thing in the body. When you eat sulfur, well, let's get into that actually. So what you have here is moringa, you have broccoli sprouts, and you have cloves of garlic. This is the basis of my Hormetic shake. In general, in terms of vegetables, the two major families that have been shown to have the most effect on human health are the allium vegetables, of which garlic is the poster child of that family. It is the most powerful one, followed by scallions and leeks. And then there is the cruciferous vegetable family, of which broccoli is one of them. These are young broccoli sprouts that I've grown myself. You may notice, I don't know if it's visible, but you may notice that I'm growing broccoli seeds in the back there. I'm always growing broccoli seeds because broccoli sprouts have a much higher concentration of the phytochemical that is the most studied out of the cruciferous vegetable family, which is called sulforaphane. It's actually, sulforaphane is the output that happens in the body. What happens is this has glucoraphanin and it has myrosinase. Myrosinase is an enzyme that when it interacts with glucoraphanin produces something called sulforaphane. Sulforaphane consumption in the body has been tied to very highly improved cardiovascular function, as well as much lower rates of cancers, including lung cancer and bladder cancer. And so what happens is, though, when you eat, for example, your cruciferous vegetables with your salad, you really have to cut them very finely and leave them cut for about 30 to 40 minutes to make sure that the myrosinase, which is in the cell membranes, is able to mix properly with the glucoraphanin. If it doesn't, you're going to end up consuming glucoraphanin and myrosinase instead of consuming sulforaphane. Now, there's a chance that your gut bacteria will be able to transform this for you as well. However, if you really want to be certain, chop your cruciferous vegetables very finely. And by the way, just to be clear, this is why people think kale is very good for you, mainly for what's in this at very high concentrations. Way higher than what's in kale, way higher than what's in broccoli. Anyway, you got to chop it very fine. And then one thing that you could do is donate myrosinase. See, I have ground mustard seed powder. Ground mustard seed powder has myrosinase in it. As long as the ground mustard seed powder has a very strong taste to it, you know the myrosinase is there. That's what causes that sharp taste. And if you, for example, are making your salads and you don't have time to wait half an hour, or you know you didn't chop it that well, you can add the mustard seed powder onto it. Now, what I do with my shake is I try to get representatives of the two major vegetable families that are useful. The allium vegetables, which I have represented here by a few cloves of garlic. Usually I add 3 cloves of garlic to my shake, although I should mention that I take 2 supplemental forms of garlic, which are highly concentrated as well. So I'm not really relying on this. I don't add more because the shake is so sharp tasting already because of the very potent molecules inside it. But anyway, so I add 3 there. And then usually I try to get, and it's difficult to measure because most of the studies measure this in not frozen, in thawed vegetable. But I try to get about 100 to 140 grams of thawed broccoli sprouts in my shake. That's the amount that produces about 40 to 60 milligrams of sulforaphane, which has been shown in studies to have tremendous impacts on human health. Now, the thing is, though, people know about sulforaphane, mainly because it's been popularized on YouTube already. But not many people know about the Moringa plant. So this is, and I'm not particularly, wedded to this brand, but there are other brands. This is one of the cheapest ones you can find on Amazon. Moringa is a plant that grows in tropical regions very well. It grows in the Philippines. Originally, it grew in India. It does still grow in India. It grows in Africa. And basically, it grows in tropical regions very well. and it's a very highly nutritious plant. And I'm not including it here because of the nutritious side of it. I don't really rely on my shakes at all for nutrition. I rely on them to turn on certain genes in my body. So for example, sulforaphane, as well as what we're going to talk about in a second, turn on what's called NRF2, which is nuclear factor erythroid 2 related factor 2. It's a real big mouthful, but it's NRF2. And when NRF2 is turned on in the body, hundreds of genes are activated. It changes our epigenome. And so that's what I'm looking for, not the nutrient density, but rather the change in my genome and the change in my biological function. But anyway, getting back to Moringa. So Moringa grows in these regions very well. It is very, very, very exceptionally high in vitamin A, but in the plant form, which is carotenoids, not retinol. And it also has other minerals and vitamins at high concentration. It's really sort of like a weed. It grows in very, you don't have to treat it very well to get it to grow. So a lot of people that are involved in like taking care of people in poverty around the world, they really go to promote the growth of Moringa and the consumption of it in places that face famine, like the Philippines and Africa. So Moringa, the plant, is quite interesting because it has a similar process within it as broccoli sprouts do. It has something called glucomoringin, which when combined with myrosinase turns into moringin, which moringin acts in the body in the same way as sulforaphane does. The advantage of Moringa over broccoli sprouts and other cruciferous vegetables is that it is not as heat sensitive as sulforaphane is, actually almost not at all. And the glucomoringin is not at all. So it can be dried. This is dried Moringa plant leaf. It's mostly, by the way, in the leaf that the Moringa is, sorry. And so you can take this and buy it dried, shipped from India usually, and you can add it directly to your shake to get another source of the molecule that's acting in the exact same way as sulforaphane. So here we have sulfur-containing molecules from the garlic, from the allium vegetables. You could also include scallions or leeks if you really wanted to, but there's really no need because garlic is the most potent version of it. Then you have the 100 to 140 grams of broccoli sprouts, which is much more concentrated than... And by the way, let me mention while I'm on it, that you can get sulforaphane in supplemental form. There's one company in France. It's the only company that provides a supplement that directly has sulforaphane. I'll link to it here. And there's also two supplement companies that seem to be somewhat reputable in the US that provide supplements that contain glucoraphanin as well as myrosinase in the same capsule, and then you can consume it and it turns into sulforaphane. But to be honest, it's not really necessary. Now, because you can grow them. But now, if you're going to rely on your cruciferous vegetables to get the sulforaphane, you're not going to get the quantity that we're getting here with this very concentrated broccoli sprout. And if you want to eat the broccoli sprout, it tastes like horrible. It really tastes horrible. It'll ruin your salad. It's just unpleasant to eat. So in general, this is my favorite way to do it. So what I do is I just throw this in here. I throw in the garlic, right? And then I use, now there's a reason why I do this. I use only 2 tablespoons. See, apparently I'm gonna have to order some more Moringa powder. I use teaspoons of the Moringa powder, because if you use more than the 2 teaspoons, you become in danger of consuming too much vitamin A as carotenoids. Now, not everybody digests carotenoids and turns them into retinol, and you can only know that if you really test your genes. You'll find that some people have polymorphisms that force them to not or make them not really capable of turning carrots and things that contain carotenoids like this into usually yellow, orange, or green vegetables into retinol, which is the bioactive form of vitamin A. And those people need to rely on liver. I already consume a lot of liver as well, so I'm very concerned about getting too much vitamin A. Otherwise, I would use more Moringa. But the problem, or Moringa, sorry. These are confusing words actually. Moringa, glucomoringin. Anyway, so I would use more, except that I'm concerned about the vitamin A. So we have all that there. Then what I do is I take some mustard seed powder and I dump that in. You don't need that much to donate some more myrosinase, just to make sure that whatever I'm getting in terms of glucoraphanin or glucomoringin from the broccoli sprouts or the Moringa, respectively, is converted into the active form that I want. So I just put a little bit there. Now this is not going to taste great. I can't lie to you. It's going to taste, it's going to be very sharp tasting. In fact, if you really do this right, what you'll notice is that your throat will sort of slightly burn when you take it. Now, I'm hoping that's going to prevent cancer in those areas that it goes through. Now, I'm going to quickly blend this, then I'm going to continue telling you about some tips on how to use it. Okay, so I've just blended the Hormetic shake, and now what I want to tell you is don't drink this directly. What you'll notice is if you drink it directly, you'll say, oh, Leo was making that up. This is not sharp tasting. It doesn't really taste that poorly, and it doesn't hurt my throat. That's because the sulforaphane has not been made yet. So you need to blend this because that's the best way to cut up the broccoli sprouts. And then you need to let it sit for at least 5 to 10 minutes. You'll notice that if you drink it after 5 to 10 minutes, it's way worse tasting. That's the sulforaphane and the Moringa in active form. The garlic is already quite pungent already. But anyway, so what I do personally, and I won't show you guys everything that I include in my actual shake, but this is the base, the skeleton of the shake. I include, for myself, I have very big problems with methylation. Methylation is your own methylation you can learn about from your genes. So because of my methylation issues, I add forms of glycine, I add creatine, I add choline, and also I add things that I don't necessarily want to put in my salad for taste reasons. So usually I add some flaxseed powder to my salads just to get some more sources of omega-3s in my diet, varied sources, because it's always a good principle with your diet is always to vary the sources of things you get. But sometimes I'll put that in here because I don't really like the way it tastes. And so anything that's a powder or that I don't really like the way it tastes, I'll add in here. In fact, oftentimes I'll add my coca supplement, which is a powder as well, directly in here, making it even more of a hormetic stressor. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Try out the Hormetic shake. Look to adding, if you consume turmeric, which is maybe not always advisable, but if you consume turmeric, you might want to include it here. If you consume coca powder, you might want to include it here. Those are all hormetic stressors. You can get a big shot of Hormesis in one go during the day, and that will really turn on your genes to be the most beneficial state that your body can have. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. So I've just blended the shake. Now I have a couple of notes for you guys to know. First of all, I just told you guys that it's going to be very sharp tasting in your throat and it's going to taste horrible and so on. And you might blend your shake at home and drink it right after and think, hey, this wasn't so bad. That's because you drank it right after you blended it. You have to wait for 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that the glucomoringan turns into moringan and that the glucoraphanin turns into sulforaphane. And when it does, it's going to taste way worse. And you got to wait for 5 to 10 minutes to do that. Second of all, I wanted to show you guys, the truth is this is really the skeleton of my shake. I add a few other things to it. The first thing I add to it is coca powder. Now I've made a video in the supplement reviews section talking about Cocavia. Now I add my coca powder for a day, which comes in this form. This is, by the way, the lowest cadmium for the amount of phytochemicals that you can find. I add one of these in there. And coca powder works in the same way as these other products do. It is a hormetic stressor for the body, and it is the most useful hormetic stressor that you can find in supplemental form except for garlic. So I add that there. Now, why I add this a bit later is because I know some of you don't want to add coca to your green juice supplement. Some of you actually care about how things taste, unlike me. I just blended it again. I'm a little bit of an extremist, so I add it directly there. And there are a few other things I add which I won't add on this video because it doesn't really apply to everyone. For example, I add a lot of my methylation products. See, I have very poor methylation, something that you can learn about in your genes. So I use creatine, choline, glycine, a few other powders. I add that into my shake, which I'm going to do right after this video finishes because I need to make my actual shake for the day. But this is the skeleton of it. Garlic, broccoli sprouts, moringa, and if you're willing to include coca powder into the shake, I would add coca powder, and that's the skeleton. And then you can add whatever else you want on top of it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and have a great and fruitful day.